4 a.m. 4 a.m. That's the time I watched my father wake up every morning growing up. And he did it for one reason. You see, my father runs a pavement maintenance company here in New England. And any given day, he needs to look across about 30 to 40 different trucks and understand where he needs to put them across job sites that they need to work at. The reality, though, is the success of his business was never really much how good of a salesman he was or how good of an operator he was. Truth is it came down to one thing. That's the weather. Simply put, it's the amount of rain that fell that season. Why? He can't operate when it's raining. And for him, this is the most important aspect of risk for how he thinks about the success of his business. Now, there are millions of folks around the world, companies, governments, organizations, all of which share the same problem. That is, the weather is one of the most important disruptive forces to how they get their job done. You might be a pilot who deals with 74% of delays that they incur being weather-related here in the United States. You might be an operator for an energy company in which deals with annually $150 billion worth of losses due to outages from weather-related causes. Or a farmer where 40% globally of the yield that the crop that you plant creates is a result of weather variability. Weather is here now, and it's getting worse, and it's getting more frequent. Now, to really understand where we're at in terms of our ability to predict the weather, which is the topic of today's talk, you have to get a sense for what the puzzle looks like worldwide. Because that's really what it is. It's one big puzzle in which understanding how one piece affects another piece, because it's all evolving throughout the atmosphere. Now, what you see on the screen here is a representation of what we call the data gap in weather. I remember showing this to my father for the first time, and he laughed, because what I told him was actually that, Dad, you currently live in one of the most advanced weather infrastructure economies in the world. And he came back to me with stories about the amount of time that the forecast had been wrong and the amount of loss that he had that season. But the truth is, for those in this auditorium here today, we have a luxury. We have the capability of pulling out our phones and actually looking at the radar that's evolving around us to understand when the rain is going to start, when the thunderstorms are going to end. What a lot of people don't realize is actually about 90% of the world's surface area is not covered by that very critical weather observation infrastructure. Some of the world's most populous countries in the world lack the management of these systems. And for the most part, that is 5 billion people that don't know if it's raining right now or if it rained yesterday. Now, to really think about where we're at in terms of our ability to predict the weather, we have to see the innovation that's been happening over the course of the past, call it 3 years. During this period, we've run into arguably the most compounding innovation as to how we predict what's going to happen, in large part because of the advent of AI. What this new technology is doing for us is it's making it so that we can run models faster. We can run more of them, more scenarios predicted every time we run the models to get a better sense of the potentials of occurrence. We can run them more often, and most advantageous is these models have the opportunity to leverage 100% of observational data available on Earth today. Now that is a really important point, because that very instrument I spoke to earlier that lives in your pocket, that you have the ability to check, what's so unique about it is that the radar, or let's take microwave sounders as well in space, they provide a three-dimensional atmospheric profile of our atmosphere. That's unique. Most satellites up in space, what they do is they take pictures. Think of it as going to your doctor, and your doctor's job is to diagnose what's wrong with you and what's going on. Imagine all they could do is look at your skin or check your forehead. only observe. Three-dimensional profiling of our atmosphere to collect end-to-end high-resolution data is what needs to happen and is what these technologies enable. However, when you look at that slide that I just showed, most of the world lacks the ability to observe the atmosphere, and the existing satellites in orbit today provide coverage every 3 to 6 hours. Now, the reality is as I mentioned earlier, what's changing in weather modeling is our ability to use that data. And to understand what I mean by that, we have to go back in history. We have to really understand how we got to where we are. In 1950 is when the first weather model ran on a computer. What brilliant minds at that time had discovered is how do we actually understand the dynamics of the atmosphere? How do we create mathematical equations that understand how does temperature impact humidity, impact precipitation, impact wind speeds? How does it all work? And how do we run it on an algorithm so that if we understand the current state of the atmosphere, we can predict it forward using physics? This was monumental. Innovation was relatively linear over the next 70 years, most of which it came from new observations, enhancements in compute, or improved equations. And now in the last 3 years, we've seen advancements more so than we did over those 70 years because we've made more lightweight models. The biggest weakness of these models that still stand as the bedrock of how we predict the weather is the speed at which they can run. They are slow, and they are inefficient, and they are costly, and that is why most of them have been run by governments throughout their entirety of their life cycle. Now, because of that, they don't use a lot of the data that's actively being collected about Earth's atmosphere. The truth is, if you go to choose and run a weather model and you start it at 8 a.m., and it finishes 4 hours later at 12 p.m., during that time period, so much happened. At any given moment in time, there are 2,000 thunderstorms currently around the world, each of which lasts for about 30 to 60 minutes. During that time, tropical cyclones can intensify. During that time, a wildfire can ignite. And you have to wait until the model runs to use that data in the next prediction. It doesn't seem right. This is what's changing. The magnification of the importance of collecting the global atmosphere and high revisit rate at high resolutions is more important now than ever, not because it gives us a picture of history in real time to be able to actually capture what's currently occurring, but the reality is these AI models have their own weakness today. Most of them are training on the same data set. It's a simulated data set. If I walked outside of this auditorium and I came back to tell you what the wind speeds were, and I told you it was 32 miles per hour, I would be lying, because I actually don't know. I don't have an instrument to tell you that, and that is how it is everywhere around the world. The problem that we confront ourselves with is that these AI models are running on simulations, and in real time, they're predicting off of simulated data as well. To move it to a place where we actually are observing truth data and inferencing on truth data, we must go to space. We must collect the atmosphere in its current state so that we can leverage this capability of which we can run models when we detect that fire igniting, when we detect that thunderstorm developing. Move it forward in space faster. It's not just forecasts at this constellation that we've spent a lot of time launching that is currently has 11 satellites in low Earth orbit, all of which are microwave sounders, providing a high-resolution global picture. It creates a historical picture as well, so that we can understand risk of what actually occurred worldwide and get a better sense of where and how we deploy and help our people worldwide. Thank you so much.